Hey, this is the coding teacher. I'm a senior software engineer at AWS. And in this video, I'm going to be going through real code examples of code written by a real junior engineer and making a bunch of suggestions about how you can be more effective in React. When to choose things to be states, when not to, how to structure your components, when to break them up, when not to, and how to structure your data structures more intelligently so that your code makes more sense and it's less buggy. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to be discussing this particular component. So it's part of like a questionnaire, right? And it's called the radio group question or something. And it's like this, right? So you come up, you have a bunch of options. And when you select one, then a little next button becomes available. So that's the gist of the component. Let's see how it gets instantiated right here. So this is an example of when it gets instantiated, radio group question, and you pass a question title, question ID, description text, radio group data, next screen, and this part is kind of like out of the scope of this. We're not worried about that right now. So let's look at where that comes from. That comes from the backend. So the backend has like these survey definitions, and so it has the ID, the title, and so the type is what determines that it's a radio group question. So you're switching on question type, right? And if it's a radio group question, you render that component. Title, description, radio group data. The radio group data is light text, heavy text is selected. And you pass all of that to here. So let's take a pause there and look at this data model and see if there's something that we could have done better there. So I see the is selected thing there, and that seems like a forward-looking decision that the engineer designing this made. And they're probably thinking, hey, maybe in the future we'll want maybe the backend to pre-populate your answers already, or maybe we'll want to have pre-selected answers, the option of having pre-selected answers. So maybe we're thinking something like that, and that's fine, right? So like that's a good thought. But let's think about how would we do that and what would the cost be of doing that differently, doing that later, right? So if instead of this data model that we have here, I'm gonna collapse some of these other ones so they don't get in the way, and we just have the one example. So instead of the data model that we have right here, we just didn't have this, right? We could have here something like pre-selected answer, and then our pre-selected answer index, and then 2, right? So that's or pre-selected index, depending on how that could be not such a good thing, but let's go with light, right? So it corresponds to one of the options right here. That I think would not be significantly more complex, and it would free us up from having to have this is selected thing in the front end, because if you think about it, right, like the front end is receiving that from the API, right here in the radio group data, and then it's passing into this radio group question, and eventually that becomes something that you put in state right here. So radio group question renders radio group, and I'm going to go more into detail into these components in a second. But you're putting it in state, and that's not necessarily the thing that you want to be beholden to, right? You could easily just write one additional line of code or just structure the state differently, right? Because in a radio group question, you can only have one selection anyway. So why are you going to have like 10 booleans for 10 options when all you really need is which ones are selected? So I think that pattern of having the selected items normalized, it actually lends itself to cleaner code and better naming. So that's another thing that I see here. This radio group data is not a great name. These should be something like radio group options or something like that instead. So that's a couple of changes that I would make here. Anyway, like what I'm trying to say here is that if you're gonna add an optimization for the future just in case we need it, first think, how difficult would this be to add later, right? And if there's no clear drawback to waiting, then wait. Don't add complexity prematurely, like ever. That's one of the very few things that are almost absolute, I think, in engineering. And I say almost absolute because nothing is truly absolute. There are exceptions to everything, but always ask yourself, you know, how hard is this going to be to add later? And if it's easy, then just do it later when you need it. So now let's go back to looking at those components here, right? So here, we saw how the data from the backend renders this radio group question. Here's the question, right? So is button enabled and set is button enabled? I think that there's some very good naming there, and I'm pretty sure what's going on. I haven't actually read into the code too much, but I think that what happens there is that when you select something, right, that enables the button. So that state variable is meant to convey that the button actually is displays, and you can see that from here, right? So if is button enabled, next button. So that right there, I think is a problem. That piece of state shouldn't exist. If you know, like you're gonna have another piece of state for what's selected, right? And if you have that other piece of state for what's selected, then you don't need this one, because you can just like your selected. I think the pattern that I'm gonna go for is something like this: const selected item use state string or undefined and undefined, right? So I'm going to actually, I'm not even gonna do that. I'm gonna do radio group item or undefined. So there's basically two things to say here. You're gonna need another piece of state for what's selected anyway, right? And if you have that, you can infer from that whether there's something selected or not, by definition. So if you can infer it from there, then you don't need another piece of state to express. And that's a thing that I often see developers going wrong. So this is like the first tip, the first major tip of the video. Think about the least amount of states that you need in order to express your UI state. Don't just like look at a screen from a designer and then just start slapping state variables for every little thing that's there. That's not your job. That's like, if you want to be a total garbage developer, then that's what you do. If you want to be a good developer that writes maintainable code, think about how to structure the smallest possible data structure that's intuitive, right? Because it can't be cryptic, otherwise you've gone too far the other way. So it's something that is intuitive and expresses everything that needs to be expressed in order to express the state in that screen, right? So in this case, we don't need this at all. We just get rid of this. And then another problem that I see here is like just having to pass that down is very, very spaghetti-like and unnecessary. So what I'm going to do here is selected item and that. Okay, so and then number two, right? So this component basically had a little piece of states and it rendered 3 props and a next button, which gets a prop that's also passed in. So it drills 3 props through, 2 string ones and 1 route for the next button, and then renders this other component. Anytime that you have a component that does so little, you don't need it, delete it, right? So what I'm gonna do is I assume that this is the component that's most referenced, but let me double check that. Let me go ahead and see. Where this is instantiated. Radio group. Okay, yeah, so the only place where that component is instantiated is right here in radio group question. So I'm just gonna delete it. This component is not gonna exist anymore. And I'm gonna hoist everything from there to here. As I'm reading this code, I'm noticing down here real quick, enable button is that prop that I just deleted from back here, I believe. Let me make sure, yeah. And so you're actually calling a set state call from your parent in the render method of the child. That is a React anti-pattern. That's like just not allowed. It's a performance bug because what you're doing is in the render method of the child, you're re-rendering the parents, right? And then there's a significant potential for something to go wrong there and you to enter an infinite loop. In this case, you are not going to because of the nature of the code, but that's a bug. And React actually gives you a warning. So when you see React giving you a warning of I can't update one component while another component is rendering, you have a bug. Like you have something that you've done very, very incorrectly and you need to fix that. Don't ignore warnings. This is not freaking, I don't know, like a traffic sign in GTA that for you to ignore, right? Like you actually have to look at those warnings and fix them. It is your job. And then, so we're gonna definitely delete that. It's totally unnecessary. We're gonna delete, so I'm gonna start by deleting stuff that's not necessary anymore. And then I'm gonna hoist whatever is necessary. Next, handle radio button click. So here's what we're doing. We're passing an index, right? And then we're calling this set something is selected, which again is like another duplicate of what we had in the parent component. We definitely don't need that. So I'm going to delete this, and save response to. Okay. So this is like some kind of replace entry. What is it? Where was that? Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this is like coming from a hook. So like there's a global state to manage the survey responses, and that's where. Okay. So this is fine. Like you could probably come up with a nicer interface for this. Actually, no. Because you need which survey you're saving to. You need the question ID. So this is fine. This is actually great. This is really, really good. But we don't need this whole component at all. So we're gonna hoist it. All right, I don't understand the orientation thing yet, but let's look at that handle radio button click. So your set radio group refresh data, not a very good name, refresh. I don't know what the word refresh is doing there, right? But what that's doing is initializing the options. The options that originally came from the server and got drilled down all the way to this component, we're initializing them as state here. And then whenever the user clicks on something, we're invoking that state setter. And what are we passing to it? We're mapping over the array. And if I is not equal to index, if object has some property light text, if it has light text, we return light text, heavy text, and is selected. Otherwise, return if object. That's interesting. Why not return the same thing? Oh, because, okay. Yeah, so like if this code were keepable, which is not, but if this code were keepable, I would, instead of doing that if whatever, I would do something like this. Return obj and selected false. Right, so that's what he's doing here. Like we need to, like if the object came with a light text, we need to again set it, right? And if it didn't come with a light text, we don't need to have that property. But you can accomplish that much more succinctly by just doing this. But again, this code is not keepable, so like it's just not good enough because you're mapping over an object for something which you just don't need to. So I'm actually going to first fix this here before hoisting. And I'm going to, this is, okay, so I'm going to delete, so selected response. Okay, selected response object is this guy. And selected response is that, and I call that and I call that to add it to the survey answers. And what else am I gonna do? I'm just gonna set this to be the selected response. So at this point, I think, yeah, I started by adding this stuff here, so I guess I have to kind of like hoist and at the same time. So I'm gonna hoist this up here. I don't understand it yet, but whatever. Okay, yeah, so never mind. So radio group data, that length is less than 5. So the style, okay. So they're gonna wrap if it's greater than or equal to 5. If the number of items is greater than or equal to 5, we're gonna wrap. So that's the point of this orientation thing. Okay, so we're gonna call this guy here. And I like to move the hooks to the right after the state declarations. Yeah, it's just like a stylistic thing that's not important, but I put state first, then hooks, then everything else. And handle radio button click. I'm going to and then radio group data and then finally set selected item, selected response object. Okay, so that's going to be my button click handler. And do I have styles down here? Yeah, I do. So I'm just gonna move this, and I'm not gonna call it container. Radio buttons to signify that it's more internal. It's not like a container for the whole thing. And then I have this that I'm going to return. Instead of returning that radio group, I'm going to return this thing. And instead of radio group refresh data, it's going to be just radio group data. Okay, no, actually, so cool. So let's see here. So the thing right here is, where do we have the, let me fix those compilation bugs. Okay, and okay, so radio button. Okay, cool. So this is fine. The radio button abstracted a lot of the styles, and I do think there could potentially be a good division there. I think that you know, you have these 3 components to express this thing. You probably could have done with 1, but it's not entirely bad that we have 2. I think it's pretty good that we have 2. All right, so is full width. Cool. So this right here could be improved a little bit. We could just say, because it's the same condition, right? We're having 2 things depend on the same condition. The condition is hard-coded in 2 places. So const is full width equals this, and then is full width, and move that down here. All right, and okay, finally, we're gonna have this one. And that's just going to be radio group data and light text, heavy text, and is selected. Okay, so for is selected, okay, let me change the container name. That's wrong right here. For is selected, I'm going to try to do an equality comparison. And is there a reason why that would not work? Let's see. So we have, no, I don't think so. Because anytime that I'm setting the state, right, I'm just basically setting the selected item to the thing that came from radio group data from the prop. So it's equal to a reference to that item, right? So I should just be able to do a reference comparison here. Radio group data, sorry, the thing in the state. Selected item equals radio group data I. So if I have that there, oh, by the way, once I ship this, and this app hasn't shipped yet, so I still have freedom to change the backend and change stuff relatively easy. It's still in testing. Once I ship this and all the testers updated, then I'm just going to remove the is selected thing from the backend. So I think this is done. Let me go ahead and test it real quick. I have it on my phone, the ability to test, and I don't necessarily want to give away too much of this app for the sake of a YouTube video. So let's see. Yep, it's working just fine. So that's it from me today. If you thought that was valuable, please go ahead and hit a like and a subscribe on my video. It helps me out a lot. I know I don't come out with these too often because I don't want to be talking about the same garbage all the time for, like, you know, with little hello world examples. I think that does much more harm than good. All of these developers talking about like hexagonal architecture with FizzBuzz level examples, they're doing more harm than good to the ecosystem. So I want to come at you with real examples, and that takes time. And I don't always have them because I can't share my code from AWS, obviously. So anyway, if this helped you, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.